I paused The Real Housewives of Potomac to film this. So, if that isn't love, I don't know what is. Hello, people of the internet. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Something I find just as creepy as the Skinwalker urban legend is the Black-Eyed Children urban legend, and I'm pretty sure I've done a video on this before, somewhere down the line, but I'm doing it again. As always, before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. What are some urban legends that make your skin crawl? Maybe I'll look them up and find some stories. If you have your own creepy, spooky Reddit-like story that you would like for me to read in a future video, make sure to email this email right here, which is also available in the description down below, as well as my tip jar information. If you're feeling generous and you're loving the content and you want to show some love, there it is. Anything is greatly appreciated. I love you. Okay, that's enough for me. Let's get into this. I used to drive a school bus, and all of my kids were pretty good, especially when by themselves. But there were these two boys in the back of the bus who would act up and do things that got them into trouble. I began noticing in my mirror right before they acted out. They appeared to have black eyes. Black eyes. I don't think it was the kids themselves, but rather a form of temporary possession. They looked like ghouls. Their eye sockets looked empty, and they both had a wide or devious smile. Their skin was pasty white. It was freaky. I began stopping the bus and squishing their plans before they could act out. After a while, it stopped. This still sends shivers down my spine. I was the store manager of a nationwide mall computer later gaming store. This was long before GameStop and cell phones. We were located on the left side facing the middle of the mall with JCPenney's to the left at the end. This detail plays into what happened. My ex-wife is a strikingly beautiful Latina woman. She was only 20 and my daughter 1.5 at the time. Fortunately for us, we had very beautiful babies. They almost looked like dolls. The reason I say this is my daughter attracted way too much attention as a baby. We stopped going out in public because people were constantly approaching us and trying to touch her. If you try to touch strangers' babies, don't. Even if you know the baby, ask the parent before you do anything. Like, where are the manners? Where is the respect? People be lacking common sense and it be blowing my fucking mind. It's a Sunday. I would work the whole day since it was a short day. The three of us would go to work. My ex-wife would dress our daughter and herself up and make a day of it. She liked to shop and wander for the day, coming back to have lunch. Being the manager, I took long breaks as well. Everything's going fine, like any other Sunday. I go out to give her some money and my spidey street senses start going crazy. I look to the left and see a man intently looking at my wife and her daughter. I meet his gaze, but he doesn't look away. We had a huge wedding with 200 plus guests. I asked my wife if she knew the person staring at her. We both look up and he was gone. Couldn't have been 2 to 3 seconds since I last looked at him. There was something strange about him. I remember to this day, he was dressed in a dark gray suit with a gray overcoat. Not to trouble her, I told her not to worry about it. We had lunch and we took the long way back to the store. We stopped by the mall security. I introduced her to the security guards who had become good buddies of mine. I pulled them to the side and told them what had happened. They were concerned. answers the phone. I'm like, yeah, I heard it ring, lol. He tells me he needs some help. He pulls me aside and says, it's your wife, and she sounds scared as hell. I jump on the phone. She tells me that the man I described has been following her for an hour, or over half an hour. When he had first showed up, she said he was reaching for our daughter. Oh my god. I immediately call security. They come up the middle with my employees standing watch on the entrance to the JCPenney's. I go out the back into the parking garage, which was no more than 50 feet away. Only two entrances into the store, front and back. Lots of emergency exits on the parking garage side, so the only entrance not covered was the front. Luck would have it, a police officer had pulled someone over from the street and was in the front parking lot. By this point, I don't want the gentleman to go away. I want him caught. Everyone starts converging on the store. He's got nowhere to go, right? They walk to the station where my wife is surrounded by the store manager, several employees, and they have her daughter behind the counter. The police officer had been alerted. Mall security escorts both of them out of the store to me. We put them in our car, and they drive straight to her mother's. They continue to search the store, every nook and cranny. He was never found. To this day, I can still remember the details. But the detail that sticks with me the most: his eyes were coal black. The next story says, not my story, but my dad's. He grew up with a single mom and 4 other siblings in southeast Texas on the border of Louisiana in a bad part of town. The house this happened in was behind a nightclub. He was born in 1967 and says this happened when he was two. And he remembers it to this day. He says him and his brothers, he says him and his brother, who was maybe 6 at the time, were sleeping on the couch in the living room, and they both woke up to a black-eyed child standing in the doorway of their closet. He said the child looked older than him by a little, had black eyes and orange hair, and had a slight glow to him, like he was under his own spotlight. He said him and his brother tried to scream, but nothing would come out. The child just disappeared after that. The reason everyone knows this is true: a couple months ago, me, my mom, and my dad were at my grandma's house, and my uncle was watching a documentary on black-eyed children. When my dad brought up what happened to him all those years ago, and my uncle started tearing up and just repeating, "Man, you've seen it too." I thought it was crazy. I can't believe you've seen it too. My uncle has a history of drug usage and mental health problems, and all these years, for over 50 years, he assumed what he had seen was fake, and just his mind playing tricks on him. It's sad because we think that this situation shook him up so badly as a kid. He started using drugs as a teen to cope with what he thought may have made him crazy. They were so scared they just never brought it up again after that, but my dad always told my mom that story ever since they started dating. My grandma, who was sitting there listening to them talk about what happened, said, "Oh, there was something in that house, Lord." I'm going to try to get her to tell me about her experiences in that house. My great-grandma lived in a town in New Mexico. She claims when she was younger, I'm assuming around her 30s, so this would be like 1950 to 1960. She was at home at night getting a snack before bed when she heard someone knocking on the front door. Knock, knock, bitch. She lives literally in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a desert, with hardly any neighbors. So when she went to answer the door, there was a child with their back turned towards her. Oh my goodness. They wanted to come in and asked her if she could give them something to eat. She refused, and they turned around to show her their face with the blackest eyes. She thought it was a demon and closed and locked her front door. She claims to have heard knocking / banging on the door and windows for hours until the sun came up. It's raining something bad. Now there's a bridge my mom convinced is a portal, as strange shit always happens down there. So as Mom's driving out of nowhere, some farmer guy steps out of the woods / trees around the creek. The bridge is above, and we have to swerve in order to not hit him. Thing is, he wasn't dressed for the rain. Hell, he wasn't even wet. Rather tall-looking farming white guy with brown messy hair, stubble, old used pants, boots, flannel shirt, none of it getting wet. And when I looked into his eyes as we swerved, felt nothing but complete unfiltered fear and dread. He didn't even have white inside of his eyes. Everything was completely black. Mom paused and asked if we should turn around and check if the guy's alright and needed a ride. I told her I'd jump out the car if she tried. The second time, I'm currently visiting my dad, stepmom, and half-siblings. There is a black-eyed kid outside, white kid in overalls, rainbow shirt, and blonde hair and bangs, and just completely black eyes with zero pupils. The thing is, I genuinely feel zero fear nor dread around him, unlike the other one, even though he's gone inside and nothing has actually happened to me personally. He's just a spirit kid. He's even told me his name is Jason. Why would you let Jason in your house? I'm sorry. Nice spirit or not, you gotta stay outside. This is a no-sleep story called Encounter with a Black-Eyed Child. I recently read a story about black-eyed kids. This story felt like a twisted tale of deja vu. I believe I've encountered a black-eyed kid. I've never mentioned this particular detail about the eyes to anyone for fear they could think I was fabricating the story or going crazy. The incident took place about 13 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were small-town newlyweds from the Midwest. We moved across country to one of the biggest cities in the Southwest so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and living in a new city, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. Never again after this. The first thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of this situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 in the morning. The second thing that should have dawned on me is that this kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch and open it. The knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work, a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build, knee-length black leather coat, short black hair, and sunglasses. The sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd, and even more odd, he was eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. I said no, closed the door, and slid the security chain into place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I replied and attempted to close the door, but before I could shut it, he put his hand out, stopping the door on its hinges. He looked me directly in the eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?" That sentence alone would have me calling the police. "Fuck that," I reply, a little confused. "Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police." It's me, I'm the wife. He takes a moment to let this information sink in, lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and says, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I force the door closed, lock it, and call out to my wife. She's scared shitless, hiding in the bedroom, all jacked up on adrenaline. I rip the curtains back to look out the window next to the door. He's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go out to the patio and check the gate. It's latched from the inside. That was fucked up, I think to myself, and as I turn to enter the house, I notice a half-eaten apple lying on the ground. I don't know 7-Eleven overnights, and the other night, February 14th, I was doing a shift change at 2:47 a.m. As I was finishing, my door chime went off, causing me to look up at the door, which was wide open and creeping shut. But beyond the door, on the other side of the gas pumps next to the air pump, I saw two kids, a boy and a girl. The boy had normal clothes on with a black t-shirt, and the girl had a white top half dress with the bottom being black. I noticed this and got confused. It's 2:50, so I finished up counting the money, and they were still there and hadn't moved. Now I already felt like something was off. I was experiencing a bunch of anxiety, and my arm hairs were charged with static. I walked out the front and I said, "Hey guys, what are you doing out here alone?" I received no response, which literally sent me with fear so bad. Then the girl, clearly a year or two older, steps off the curb and she extends her hand. Her brother took it and hopped off the curb playfully again. "Come inside where it's warm." As I said that, my whole body shut down, and I literally was scared for my life. When the fear subsided, I ran behind the counter so fucking fast. I sat there and watched them cross over the curb. It was now 3:05 toward the building, but never saw them emerge again. I have to go back to work tonight. I've been off since this, and I'm absolutely terrified. I invited them in, so damn it, am I in trouble? My cat's been hissing at nothing when I'm home alone. I think they didn't come in or towards the front of the store because it's got so much lighting. I think the heavy lighting stopped that encounter. I also had my boss roll back the cameras, and they saw nothing. She thinks I'm crazy, so does everyone else. Except maybe people who have experienced this. I'm worried about work for some reason. It's like I'm going to my death. It's eating my chest. Here is another no sleep story. I'm not a writer. I just love reading all these stories on here. They're all so creepy. I just never thought to post something for help. Let me tell you a little about myself. I'm in my early 20s. I just moved into this apartment, and I tend to live a very private life. I don't even have a Facebook account. I work during the day at a grocery store. Okay, so I'm walking up my flight of steps to get to my apartment, and I hear these kids laughing, and then I heard whispering. It was kind of late, so I thought that this was weird, but I ignored it. I walked into my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor. I was getting ready to open my balcony door. It was really muggy in my apartment. I walk over to the door and I pulled the blinds, and two kids are fucking staring back at me. Sorry for the F-bomb, but I'm still shaking. I screamed and backed away and smashed my leg into a table. They were both in jeans, and the oldest, he was taller, had on a green shirt with white stripes, and the younger one had on a button-up blue shirt. The oldest one touched the sliding door. "Don't do that." "Hey, miss, can you let us in?" The younger one just kept looking around. I just stared at them. I finally was able to say, "How'd you get on my balcony?" I walked to the door and noticed how excited the older one got as I moved closer to the entrance. "Can you let us in?" I wasn't thinking. I unlocked the door, and when I looked back up, their eyes, you guys, their eyes were black. The entire eye. I quickly locked the door and told them I had to call the police. Because my door was jammed and I couldn't unlock the door. So I called the police. The oldest boy pleaded with me the entire time to let them in. The police arrived about an hour ago. They came in and walked to the balcony. When they opened my balcony door, nothing was there. They looked down and saw two children. They were running in the parking lot away from the building. The police took a report and said that they had to have help getting up there, and that they would question the neighbors. I'm freaking out. I'm crying. I don't want to stay here, but then again, I don't feel safe going outside right now. I'm scared. No sleep. Sleep. I put salt by my door and windows, but I've never seen black eyes like that. Not even in the movies. I'm terrified. Do you think they'll come back? You must watch a lot of Supernatural to put salt on your windows and doors. grandmas really were Cherokees, and the school playground we were currently playing on really had once been an Indian burial ground. Haunted, all of it. She told us one particular grotesque story about the deer lady who had been a heartbroken woman that went insane and cut her legs off and stitched a deer's legs onto her torso in place. Her final story inspired what we thought would be a fun adventure. She told us a chief's 15-year-old daughter had been brutally murdered by her white husband on their anniversary for flirting with another man. They buried her, and out of respect, never removed her gravestone. When the school was built, Allie told us it would take a bit of maneuvering, but there was a panel that could be removed and we could crawl underneath the school and see the gravestone. Wow, no. We were all in shape. Of course, you are your children. So we began our adventure. To our disappointment, the panel had been screwed shut and it began to rain. My brother and I decided to go home. Allie, however, insisted that there be another way in. Allie and I would not be friends. I tried to tell her that her parents would probably be worried and that it would be best for her to go home too. But she was determined to find a way in. Oh my fucking god, Allie, go home. My brother and I went into my grandparents' house and changed into some dry clothes, drank Kool-Aid, and watched TV. While my brother and grandparents were watching The Fairly Odd Parents, I noticed I could still see Allie, drenched in rain, trying to find a way underneath the school from the living room window. Eventually she did. I watched her crawl in, but I never saw her crawl out. We sat through an entire episode of Fairly Odd Parents and half an episode of Drake and Josh. Quality TV. So I'd been 45 minutes. That night I had trouble sleeping. I told myself she had to come out a different way, or maybe it came out when I wasn't looking, and finally drifted off. The next morning I woke up refreshed. I was certain Allie had found a way out. My grandparents took us to the carnival and to Brahms, the local ice cream shop. It was 6 o'clock in the evening when we got home, and my grandma began cooking supper while my grandpa took a nap. My brother and I were kids though, so we still had a lot of energy left. We went across the street to play some more, and our grandma told us she would call us when supper was ready. I told my little brother that I had seen Allie go underneath the school and asked him if he was up for an adventure. He agreed, and I went to the panel that I saw Allie loosen. I loosened and crawled underneath the school, and my brother followed. The reaming daylight flooded into the basement along with us, providing us just enough light to see things directly in front of us. The ground was cold, wet dirt, and there were so many pipes and old basketballs to crawl around. I immediately spotted 8 to 10 headstones, though. The first one was directly to the right of my brother and I, but the name was too faded to read. I was feeling kind of creeped out that Allie had been right and we were crawling over a bunch of dead bodies. I probably would have left, but my brother didn't seem afraid at all, and I wanted to seem braver than him. So I crawled to the next stone. This one read Andrew Cummings and had a birth date of 1890 and death date of 1902. There was one to the left of it that read Allison Cummings and had a birth date of 1893 and death date of 1902 also. This freaked me out even more. It made me think of Allie, who had the same name and looked about the same age as the dead girl several feet below me. My brother suddenly shouted, "Look, something in the corner just moved." Stop it. Before I could tell him that we should leave immediately, he shoved me out of the way and began crawling incredibly fast to the corner furthest from us. I could clearly see a couple of large figures moving, but couldn't make out much else. "They're probably just dogs, let's go," I told him. But as he crawled, I crawled right behind him, getting closer and closer to see larger figures that began to look more and more like silhouettes of 3 people sitting against a wall, all their knees to their chests. When they came into clear view, my brother could see my brother's eyes glowing, but none of their eyes glowed. It didn't even really look like they had eyes, just bits of darkness. Yeah, we're going to be leaving now, I said, trying my hardest to sound casual and not scared. All three laughed. And the girl spoke up. No, you're not. Her voice had a confidence that mine didn't. I pushed my brother in the direction we came, and he began quickly crawling away. I heard my grandma calling out to us and calling out to help us. All three of them suddenly stopped laughing. Allie suddenly looked scared, and she said, "Leave right now, and never tell a soul you saw us." You got lucky. We didn't even have to be told twice and quickly crawled out. At dinner that night, my brother and I chalked up our silence to having been a long day and us being tired. We never played at the playground across the street again and really talked about the incident. 5 months after we left, my grandparents... I have chills, and my eyes are watering. 5 months after we left, my grandparents were murdered in their own home. A neighbor had said she'd seen my grandma led 3 children into their home the day of their murder. A bald boy, a blonde girl, and a dark-haired girl. Cops were never able to find any leads, and the case was eventually closed. Neither my brother nor I planned to visit that town or Oklahoma ever again. But I know it doesn't matter. I'm certain that one day they'll show up on my step too. I know I'll tell them to go away, and I can only hope that will be enough. Well, on that note, I'm done. I'm stopping there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm shook up. Got your own story? Email this email. It does not have to be a story of your own, but if it's a Reddit type story, bring it my way. And lastly, if you're feeling generous and you love the content and you want to show some love, it's always greatly appreciated. Here's my tip jar information, which is also available in the description down below. Are y'all shook up? I hope you enjoyed this video. I really did.